only the results will be given to the end user, and PHP is free to download and use, right? So long back, maybe PHP and SQL, they are very popular for developing web applications. So it's again easy to learn PHP. And the thing is that since it's an open source and freeware language, it was used for HMI, human machine interface language, in many places. So again, you have some features about PHP, so hypertext preprocessor. So the advantages are that it is used to generate dynamic page content. So what do you mean by dynamic web pages? So what's the difference between static web pages and dynamic web pages?
We
So
can
normally
change
the
the
news
content.
websites that we have are dynamic. It gets updated by time, whereas static is just images and text which do not get updated.
Right. So long back, we used to have some static web pages where the content cannot be updated once the content is being uploaded into content is being loaded into the user's web browser. Whereas in the case of dynamic web pages, the contents can be contents can be updated even after it's being loaded in the user's web browser. Right. Right, Subramania. Right. So PHP can be used to again work with file processing system. It can be used to open a file, read a file, write, delete a file, and close a file on the server. It can collect form data, right? So generally for interfacing with the end user, we have some forms designed using HTML language. So it can collect the data from the forms. So PHP is a middleware or a server-side scripting language that can be used to add, delete, or modify data in your database. So it can be used to insert record in your database, or it can be used to delete record or update access. And we can also encrypt the data using PHP, right? So let us discuss about other question in whenever you study something about web technology, you have two categories of languages: client-side scripting languages and server-side scripting languages, right? So like a PHP is an example for a server-side scripting language, whereas we have JavaScript as an example for a client-side scripting language. So what is the difference between client-side scripting and server-side scripting? Any idea or any, can someone give the difference between client-side scripting and server-side scripting? Can anyone explain the features of client-side scripting language?
Client side will be just scripts that will run on client's browser,
Right.
whereas server side scripting will have scripts on the web server,
Right.
which will give some response to the client's request.
Client side is the front end and server side is the back end.
That's correct. So client is the front end and server side scripting is the back end. Can you be more precise about why do we go for client side scripting languages? So why do we go for client side scripting?
To interact with the users?
Yes, maybe. Yeah, it's a solution. So the other thing was that long back, maybe some 10 years back or something, the bandwidth was very low, right? So what happens is that like the client, we are going to send some information from the client to the server side. So what happens is that the client may not fill all the form elements, right? Again, the data may be in a different format also, right? So to serve as an extension of a web server, we go for client side validation. So for example, when a person fills his email address, right? So if he is not going to give the proper domain name, or it will point an error in the client side itself. Similarly, if some form elements are not filled and they are being submitted, right? So previously, even now, whenever you go for designing a web page, there's a lot of network traffic between the client user machine and the server, right? So if you are going to send some form with many form elements unfilled, what happens is that it will be sent to the server. Server will find out that many of the elements are not filled, so it will again send it back to the client. It says that this information has to be mandatorily filled and so on. So to validate the data that is being given in the client side, so for example, the age of a person, maybe like I will assume that age of the person will be maximum 2 digits, uh, right? So like marks of a particular student, again you have some student information system or something where we assign marks and it is displayed to you. So we assume that the marks is going to be less than or 100 at most, the maximum value is going to be 100 and so on. So whenever I need to validate something at the client side itself, I need to go for this client side client side scripting languages. Here the major advantage is that it reduces the network traffic. It is used to validate the form elements, right? So it reduces the network traffic in the sense that so the form elements are validated at the client side itself. If something is missing, right? So missing elements are there in a form, or something is right, something is an invalid data, it will point to the client, so that the information is not transmitted from the client to the server side, right? So it serves as an extension of a web server. It is used to reduce the network traffic. It is used to validate the data that is given by the client and so on, right? So now we have the other category of languages, like server-side scripting languages, like PHP, or we have other languages, ASP.NET, and so on. So why do we go for this server-side scripting languages?
Security, sir. For like passwords and related stuff, you can't like display it to clients directly, so you have to.
Right, correct. So to validate the client user's credentials, it cannot be done at the client side itself. It has to be done at the server side. So again, uh, for connecting to a backend database, so whenever you validate a user ID and password, you need to validate the data in a backend database, whether the user ID and the password is correct for a particular user. So to connect to a backend database, we need to go for server-side scripting languages to authenticate some information like your user ID, your password, your credit card details, and so on. Like to authenticate to authenticate some uh, confidential data, we need to go for server-side scripting languages. Uh, the other thing is that yeah, here the code is executed at the server and only the result is given to the client, right? So the user will not be able to, the end user will not be able to see the program or script. He'll be seeing only the output code, so output data that is being generated. Again, server-side scripting languages, they can also use to customize the web pages, right? So for example, when I log into my online banking account, it will display like hello username, right? So it looks like I'm accessing my own bank account, or like whenever you access your mailbox, right? So it has a customized message displaying your username, your details. So it looks like you have a feeling like you access your own data, or you access your own mailbox, right? So to generate some customized messages for different types of users who are accessing the system, we go for this server side scripting languages, right? So the major thing is that to connect to a backend database. So whenever you are going to uh, receive the data some from form elements, right? So a language, server-side scripting language like PHP, it is used to collect the data form elements from some HTML forms and store it in a backend database. We go for this server-side scripting languages.